Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to have a quick look at inference questions, and we're going to try and answer a couple of inference questions. And with inference questions, you're being tested on your ability to read between the lines of historical sources. So the job of historians is to create a picture of the past, I suppose a bit like a jigsaw picture. And individual historical sources are a bit like individual pieces of the jigsaw. And what historians need to do is they need to figure out how these pieces fit together, but they also need to figure out what individual sources are telling them. So the job of historians is to analyse, to have a deep look into historical sources and read between the lines and figure out what those sources are actually telling them.
Okay, so for source 1, the first thing we've got to do is look at the focus of the question. And it's two things you can infer from source 1 about the growth of the NSDAP. So two things that the source is suggesting about the growth of the Nazi Party. And then the first part of source 1, it says, at one of the early congresses I was sitting surrounded by thousands of SA men. And what that seems to suggest is that one reason for the growth of the Nazi Party, one reason for the growth of the NSDAP, is they had huge support from the SA who supported them and backed them up in meetings. And then we have this second sentence. One man in particular struck me as he leant forward with his head in his hands and said with a convulsive sob, "Gott sei Dank, God be thanked. He understands." So what that suggests is one reason for the growth of the Nazi Party was that Hitler was able to connect with ordinary Germans. So it suggests that one reason for the growth of the Nazi Party is because Hitler had this brilliant ability to connect with ordinary Germans. So then answering the question, you would say, what I can infer that the SA were an important reason for the growth of the Nazi Party. The detail in the source, there is this quote where it says, I was sitting surrounded by thousands of SA men. And then the second thing you can infer, I can infer that one reason for the growth of the Nazi Party was because of Hitler's ability to connect with ordinary people. And then the details in the source, you've got this quote from this man that says, Gott sei Dank, God be thanked, he understands, which suggests that Hitler understood how ordinary Germans were thinking. So then if we look at source 2, two things you can infer, two things that source 2 suggests about the stability of the German economy. How stable was Germany's financial situation in the late 1920s? So then the first part of source 2, you've got this brilliant phrase that Stresemann uses, that the German economy is dancing on a volcano. And what that suggests very strongly is that the German economy is incredibly unstable and could be destroyed at any time. So then the second part of source 2, you have this sentence, if the short-term loans are called in by America, most of our economy will collapse. And again, this suggests that the German economy is extremely unstable, specifically because it is all dependent on and based on American money, that the German economy can't stand up on its own, and so could collapse at any time if America decided to call its loans back in. So then you answer that question the same way you did with source 1. What I can infer, German economy is incredibly unstable, it could collapse at any time. The detail in the source that suggests that is this brilliant phrase, dancing on the edge of a volcano. A second thing you can infer, the main reason for the instability is because the German economy is based on American loans, and then a quote saying most of our economy will collapse if the American loans are called in. And that's it. These answers are very straightforward. You don't write too much. You don't bring in any of your own knowledge. It's 4 marks. You should really only spend about 4 minutes answering one of these questions. Okay.
So the way these questions work, you have to pick out two inferences, two things that the sources are suggesting, and you're not bringing in any extra information, you're not bringing in any of your own knowledge, you're simply having a good look at the source, figuring out two things that the sources are saying about a particular topic, and providing two pieces of precise evidence from the source that support your answer. So you make one inference, provide some detail, make a second inference, provide some detail. You should only ever really spend about 4 or 5 minutes answering these questions. However, you don't want to get these questions wrong. Quite often the difference in grades between a higher grade and a lower grade isn't because of the more complex questions, it's because people have missed a trick on the simple 4-mark questions. So you're going to have a go at answering 2 4-mark inference questions and then hand them in and we'll get them marked. Okay, thanks very much.